Craft Brews and Casual Conversations. My name is Drew. Rob is joined with me. I was on the fence of if I was actually going to drink something today because I haven't gone on a run recently, and I'm feeling the itch to abuse my body in the form of exercise, but it's going to be too late. So I'm going to drink something. Rob's going to drink something, and Rob's going to do something a little unique and bring in our very special guest after he says the words.
Oh, cue it? Yeah, cue it.
You're about to hear the greatest show of your life.
Dude.
Dudes with brews on a porch with Rob and Drew.
Those are the words. We're not doing the live, right? We're just going.
No, just go.
Okay. So joining us today is a very special guest, 13 years in the beer industry. He's going to have to pronounce whatever this word is, brewerage.
Brewery.
Oh, okay. It's just,
Yeah, that's just how they spell it in Belgium and a handful of other like European countries.
but he works for Harland Brewing Company now, which we've done a lot of their beers. Me and him met and became friends over our mutual love of the Packers. And just to describe this man, if you looked at him, you would say, if this man was at Lambeau Field on a Christmas Day game, he's getting on camera because he looks like a straight up winter Packer fan elite. And this is the infamous Carl.
Wow, thank you. That's flattering, I'm pretty sure.
You
Yes,
do look like
yes.
a purebred Wisconsinite. If I were just looking at you, I'd be like, that guy is flowing with the green and gold straight out of Wisconsin.
Thanks. I actually spent the first 9 years of my life outside of Chicago before I moved to the very rural Kenosha County of Wisconsin. But,
Okay.
that first year up there was Super Bowl 32 when the Packers beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
And at 9 years old, there was no way I wasn't getting swept up in that. So
Hell yeah.
it really had virtually no sports allegiance before that. So the green and gold does run deep despite not being a native.
That's all right. We'll take you. We'll accept you.
Sweet.
I
No choice.
Theoretically, I'm not a native Wisconsinite either because I was born in Nevada, but we only lived there for 6 weeks and then we shipped to Wisconsin. So,
That doesn't count.
yeah, close enough.
What's weird is I am born and raised Wisconsin, and if you're given pictures of all three of us, I would be the one that you would swear was not from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I would think you're from like Norway or something.
And then I would say thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I don't look like I'm from Wisconsin. Here, have a Coke. I'm sorry.
Norway makes sense, but I would have given you honestly Nevada or Arizona. The Southwest kind of seems like where you might be from.
I'll take Arizona. It's David Spade territory.
There you go. But Carl, thanks for hopping on and actually being able to spout out some actual wisdom. So earlier before I said I am drinking, and I'm drinking something a little unique. I'm not drinking a beer. I was gifted a cider, a local cider from Sunken Cider Works in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I don't know if you're familiar with Oshkosh, Carl, far north of Kenosha. It's there.
Oshkosh, I am familiar with,
Hell yeah.
but not the cider itself.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a pretty new place for the most part, but it's a black currant or currant, however you want to say it, off dry, 6% alcohol by volume. It's made with currants that are grown in Oshkosh as well, so it's all around an Oshkosh cider. It's got like a pretty like pinkish hue to it. It kind of gives me some wine vibes. I'm not really a huge wine person, but it has that apple kick to it as well. So it's a good blend. It's good. I was gifted this from our friend Brittany Rob. She gave me this. Her dad actually dropped it off. So, but yeah.
How does it feel to get gifted? To get gifted your drink? Is it better?
Yeah, for once, it's nice.
Yeah. Normally, I'm the one that brings the gifted beers. I'm gonna let Carl take the description of this if he wants to.
Yeah, so Harland Brewing did a collab with my actually previous employer, Brewery West. Did this West Coast IPA, very intentionally unfiltered. This could be a lesser brewery's version of a hazy IPA. I've seen them almost that clear and light before. 6.3 in the ABV. It's a little lower than a lot of our West Coast IPAs tend to be. Those are usually between like around, our year round is 6.8. Kind of hover around 7, give or take. We called this Space Melter. I unfortunately don't know the name behind, or the story behind that name. But I do know that if this was being named by Brian, the owner of Brewery West, he usually has to kind of meditate and come to some sort of name nirvana that really like means something to him. Let's see. Hops: Citra, Peacherine, and Waimea. So Waimea is a New Zealand hop. New Zealand hops, in my experience, tend to be kind of a little more like earthy and peppery and herbaceous and just kind of like complex, really. Hops like, wine grapes, due to the differences in minerality in the soil and climate and humidity and all that stuff, can really change the way they develop and change their flavors. For instance, there's Cascade hops grown in New Zealand. They actually give them a different name. They call it Pikimai, because it's the same plant, but it just comes out so differently when it's grown there versus over here. And then Peacherine, I'm assuming that this is like kind of a new sort of offshoot hybrid hop. I've heard of it. I haven't had it in anything that I know of until right this moment. But yeah, this beer is very like soft, kind of citrusy, not very bitter. It's got a little bit of grassy, kind of herbaceous character to it.
Nice.
But I'm getting a lot of just kind of like citrusy, soft, refreshing, fruity notes from it.
I'll say this: it's maybe I'm wrong. You can tell me, because this is always my big question. I don't know how to describe beers properly based on the hops and things like that. Seems tart up front and then gets real smooth on the back end and is more of has a fruity aftertaste. Did you get that, or am I just?
I could see that. I mean, taste is so subjective. I always think it's kind of bit of a fool's errand to tell someone they're like you can't taste something wrong. You taste what you taste. But yeah, Citra. I've had beers with Citra that are just like so pungent and like over the top in flavor that like sour would be a word that I would use to describe some of the Citra hop beers I've had. And then I mean, Peacherine, again, never had this before. Today's the first.
This is it's definitely like got a tropical feel to it.
Yeah.
Very summer type beer. It's really good. It's interesting because the flavor starts really strong and then kicks off and then lingers.
Awesome.
And then we right now are two of the first people in LA to have this beer. This beer hit our warehouse in Los Angeles today. So yeah, super fresh. If anyone's wondering where to get Space Melter in the market, it'll hit your craft go-to spots starting tomorrow.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. So you said you were born in the Chicago area, roughly, right?
Yeah.
Shipped up to Wisconsin for a little bit.
Before we kick into this,
oh, sorry,
I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah.
So I just want to read this real quick. Peacherine hops, one of the latest advanced hop selections from Freestyle's breeding program, displaying a complex nectarine and citrus character with sweet fruit, lime zest, and tropical notes. So that's a little bit. Does that sound right?
Sure.
I mean, that's what the internet tells us.
There you go.
Before we move on. All right, Chicago, Carl, Green Bay Packer fan, fun guy to drink with. Let's go.
So, like, where did your journey to beer begin? Did you, did you start with a Miller Lite like most people in the state of Wisconsin, or did you Like how were you introduced to it, and how do you end up on the West Coast now, like being a representative of a brewery?
I mean, yeah, I drank oceans of Keystone Light starting at
Yeah.
a almost embarrassingly young age, but I mean, it's rural Wisconsin. That's kind of how it goes up there. And no, when I was 23, I kind of got out of high school and I just like worked like regular jobs, moved out of my parents' house a couple of times before it took. I was just living like a pretty normal life. I didn't like go off to school or anything, but I did have like a college fund that my family was getting kind of disappointed in me for not using. So I got sick of ditch digging and whatever else. And then when I was 23, I decided to move to Chicago to go to film school. There's some
Nice.
coincidence in that because now I live in Los Angeles and have never really entertained doing anything remotely related to my degree. Um, when I was in college, I just needed like a job that I could like write papers at or like do homework at. And there was this kind of like a boutique version of a bodega opening next to one of the campus buildings. And so I got that just so I could do homework on the clock somewhere. Um, and they hired me because they were like, "Oh, you've worked in bars. We actually need someone. We don't know anything about craft beer. We need someone to kind of select our beer for us." And coincidentally, like earlier that week, I finally had like an IPA that I liked. Um, I had been making fun of craft beer pretty much the whole time before that. My roommates in college would drink these, god awful bitter IPAs, and like I get it, the esoteric bottle looks kind of cool, and everyone knows that you like overspent on it, but you're full of shit, and these beers are awful. And then finally one day I had the first two I had that I liked were Arrogant Bastard, which is weird because it's like the most bitter beer ever. I think the malt character kind of got me, and then Three Floyd's Alpha King. I think I had both those in the same week, and I was like, damn it, I'm gonna get really into this, but I'm broke, and I hate standing in line, so I don't know how I'm gonna pursue what's gonna be like an overindulgent relationship with this craft beer thing that I've been making fun of up until
Hmm.
now. And then luckily these guys hired me at this little shop, and they're like, "We're gonna need you to do our like take care of our beer selection." Um, and I started meeting all these beer reps, and I was like, "These guys look like they're having a really good time. They're a handful of beers deep whenever they feel like at weird hours of the day. Love that." Um, and yeah, I do not have like a disposition for sales naturally. I mean, after this many years, I finally do, but um, I just saw it as a way to be around beer and get paid for it, and kind of have like a just not a super normal job. Um, it just seemed like a little more kind of like weird and fun, I guess,
Hmm.
than anything else I would probably wind up doing. I also wasn't thrilled with film school anymore at that point. The majority of the student body was kind of ruining it for me. Um,
Yeah, those film school nerds.
I thought they were gonna be kind of cool and punk rock and like DIY, and I had never seen so many pea coats in my life, and I just thought it really sucked all the fun out of what should have been fun. Like I wanted to make goofy shorts about like throwing up on a first date or something like that, and
Yeah.
everyone else wanted to be the next like Gus Van Sant, and I'm like,
Yeah.
there's thousands and thousands of us, so chill out. So, um, all that is to say that I was kind of like disillusioned with the whole idea of being in film school, honestly, and pursuing a BFA. And then so these guys stumbled into my life, and I was like, okay, how do I get that job? And I got really lucky. There was a bar that was closing across the street from the store that I worked in, and the guy that was closing it was opening up a distributorship. He needed someone that he could pay like no money to, and I just needed a way into that side of the industry. So it
Hmm.
really worked out for both of us. So yeah, for 4 years after that little buying job, that little retail curation job, I sold a portfolio called Shelton Brothers. They had McKellar back in the day before McKellar ever had its own brick and mortar, which it no longer does now. But when they were Gypsy Brewing out of De Proof in Belgium, and they would brew out of Sly Fox in Philadelphia, and everything was gypsy brewed.
Can we just, I'm just gonna, I've heard that called Rebel Brewing as well, I think. Can you explain Gypsy Brewing?
Gypsy brewing. So I'm actually not familiar with the term rebel brewing, but gypsy
I
brewing.
might be remembering it wrong,
No,
but
that could be a thing.
yeah.
I just don't know. Gypsy brewing is where you're just going to a pre-existing facility and basically like renting
Yeah.
use of their equipment. You know, your beer is going to sit in their fermenters, but you are brewing it yourself. Then there's contract brewing, where you have a recipe of your own and you're just paying someone to make it for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of contract brewing now, especially with like Drecker. I don't know if you've heard of Drecker Brewing Company.
Yeah.
Toppling Goliath does a ton of that now as well. The contract brewing where they give the recipe. I think they did Gypsy Brew a little bit. Like they would take their head brewer down. They would come, and like that's how they do like collaborations as well, as they would come down to the whatever other brewery that they're going to. They're going to say, okay, I'm going to brew one thing of King Sue here, and then we're going to do a collab together as well. So I think, yeah, that's a pretty common practice, I think, still.
It's funny. The first batches I ever had, the first Pseudo Sue batches that went to Chicago were contract brewed out of somewhere in Florida. I don't know if I ever knew what brewery, but um, I didn't know for the longest time that Pseudo Sue was hazy. I thought it was like a West Coast pale ale, and I really like those contract versions, and I don't like the hazy pale ale versions quite as
Mm-hmm.
much as I like the more West Coast style versions.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you and I know we kind of interrupted your
Yeah, I didn't mean
process.
to interrupt you, but I'm thinking
No,
of our
please do.
yeah, thinking of our listeners and the fact that we have somebody on that knows craft beer better than we do, that knows the industry. I mean, there's because
Well, my job is to convince you that I know about craft beer. After selling beer in Los Angeles in the current state of craft beer, I feel like I used to know more than I know now because a lot of uh, the more involved knowledge isn't as important. It's just like numbers and growth statistics and like the stuff you can brag about. Not a lot of people are asking me like what grain, what yeast, anything like
Right.
that is like in our
well, I
beers.
feel like being a good salesman is selling on the person that you're selling to, not necessarily on. But I will say about Harland is one of the things that we've said about you guys, and this is what's interesting to me about this collaboration beer, is your cans are always the same. And I know we did a beer where at the beginning of the show when I was explaining, I was like, they don't, these guys don't care about can design. They care about flavor. They care about quality of product. But
Funny you
here,
say that.
yeah.
They actually care a lot about aesthetic.
Really?
But and that's why it doesn't change much because they've found one that they like. And they like things to be very clean and kind of simple, maybe somewhat minimalist, informative, you know. But yeah, they want their cans to look clean and similar to each other. Like branding is actually really important to these guys. They want to be easily identified. So
Mm-hmm.
hence the uniformity
Oh,
of our
when you
cans.
see one of a Harlan Brewing Company can, it's very noticeable. That's what's interesting about this collaboration. It goes away from that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Some of our limited stuff, they'll get a little more experimental, I guess, or yeah, they'll go off of their typical aesthetic a little more on limited releases and seasonal stuff. But it's still pretty distinctly Heartland.
So how does that process go? How do how do they and maybe and I don't know if you know, but how like they determine what they're going to do? So they probably have some staples, I would imagine, some flagship beers that they're always going to
Yep.
carry. How do you come to a determination of, all right, today or this time around we're gonna try this type of IPA? You know, there's 16,000 different types of IPAs, cold IPAs, West Coast hazy, New England doubles, triples, all that kind of stuff. How do they come to that determination of what beer they're going to make? Is it from based on like what they see in the market, what they see is selling already at breweries and bars, or are they looking for something that isn't offered anywhere else?
It's a combination of those things, and also um, you're usually reacting to something that maybe not usually, but often enough, what you decide to make is a reaction to something that maybe didn't work as well as you would have liked.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if let's say we have like this kettle sour series,
Right.
you're gonna go for like lighter fruit in the summer, and then in the well, I always feel weird saying winter out here.
Whatever, it gets cold out here.
Yeah. Your 60
I remember
degrees winter nights are so
I need to get
cold.
my jacket.
Yeah.
the first time I heard someone say winter in Los Angeles, I very earnestly asked them. I was like, "So you guys say winter out here?"
I was very interested in me too.
I wasn't even really making a joke. I was just like, I'm kind of surprised you guys call it that. And they're like, well, what should we say? And I was like, well, I don't know, but that feels kind of like,
This is a Wisconsin spring, baby.
yeah.
If you don't need an ice scraper, it's not winter.
Right. Right.
That's what I always tell people. And then they go, "What's an ice scraper?" And I go, "Well, it is what it sounds like it is.
Yeah.
It's a thing that gets frozen inside your car."
It's a process.
But yeah, you choose your flavors and all that based on seasonality, based on what's popular. But I do notice us or any brewery that I've had any kind of working relationship with, a lot of new recipes are a reaction to something that maybe didn't go so well. So
Sure.
let's say we made a kettle sour with like a darker fruit and it didn't sell very well. It's like, all right, well, this one we're going to do with like pineapple or something like that, you
Hell
know?
yeah.
So you're the rep for the beer company. Do you guys deal with reps for, say, hop, like hop production?
Yeah.
Like, so there's all these reps out there that probably come in the same circles or whatever. And
I never run into them. They're going to breweries, and I wonder if that's as face to face as my job is. Like, I always joke that my job is, but I mean, it's not that inaccurate. That I get paid to drink beer with my friends, or I professionally hang out at bars. Pretty accurate.
I've seen it. He's not lying.
Yeah, I'm out there. Yeah, so no, there are definitely reps for like hop companies, hop farms, but I imagine there's a lot less hop farms, obviously, so they're probably not. They're covering a giant territory. I mean, they're probably selling nationally. Yeah, it's interesting. I really don't know that much about it, but I mean, just I know that there's definitely someone communicating with our head brewer, production manager, whatever, about trying to talk him into a new hop on the
Using these New
market.
Zealand hops,
Yeah, stuff like that.
Can
How many
you
people were? How many people? How big is that? Like, because I want to get down to Harland. Me and my buddy Francisco are planning a trip down to San Diego to do some brewery hopping, which is where you guys are based out of. Yes.
Yeah, we've got 4 tap rooms. Our production facility is pretty huge. That's where the first tap room is. Sorry, what were you going?
Well, but so how big is your operation over there? How many employees? Like, is this a pretty big brewery? Can some places like say Trustworthy, small operation? I
Right.
don't know if they're getting New Zealand hops. I don't know if they're getting these Peacherine new whatevers to do what they're doing. I've seen some small operations. I've seen some big operations when it comes to craft brew.
Yeah,
And
we're on the bigger side for a independent brewery, a brewery that's as old as we are. We were the fastest growing brewery in Southern California of 2023. I don't know how much. I mean, it's probably not the greatest benchmark, but it says something. We're getting big kind of quick. Yeah, how many employees? I mean, so
well, that's really neither here nor there. I'm just interested in how many people, like department, me and this guy, we grew up working in a major factory, a worldwide production factory that shipped everywhere, and it's like there was departments of people, and there were people that worked there that you would never ever meet. It's like, do you know people within your company, or is it big enough where like, oh, the guy who talks to, like that talks to the hop merchants, you're not going to meet that guy. The guy that does the can logos, you're not going to meet that guy. Is it that big?
well, I mean, yes and no. So there are people that I don't know very well at our company, but that's just by way of the fact that the facility is in San Diego and I sell beer in, Los Angeles
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes
plus.
sense.
Um, So let's see. If you're working at Harland Brewing, I feel like you're gonna know pretty much everyone. But
Oh, okay.
it is a big team. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things, uh, kind of behind the scenes besides just the brewing.
Hmm.
These guys are really into the sales and marketing aspect of things. They're pretty competitive dudes, so they just love to like kind of push themselves and see what they can manage to do. And yeah, I mean, they have a team of people just constantly working to see what kinds of accounts they can get into that wouldn't be the first thing you would think of, like for craft beer. Like they want to see Harlan in very unlikely places.
Hmm.
So they employ people to work specifically on that type of thing, which means that our team is pretty developed. We probably do have more departments, quote unquote, than a lot of breweries would. Um, there's breweries that don't have any salespeople and they just leave that up to their distributor. They're like, "Hey, our beer's pretty good. You can call us if you want some." Or there's breweries that are just a tap room,
Right.
just a brew pub. You come there, you drink it there. It's not really available anywhere else. Um,
Why do you think craft beer has grown to what it is now? Because like you said, and I was kind of in a similar ilk of what you said. Like I would get like these people would start drinking these IPAs. I tried one time and I was like, this is horrible. Like just give
yeah,
me spotted cow all the time and I'll drink that.
right.
That's
And
Cider Cow.
Of course.
All right,
and
just
then
making sure.
at one point in time, I had that IPA that I was like, wait a minute, this is really good. This is delicious, and I fell in love. Similar to what you're saying, um, and it's now just grown into this gigantic thing. So like, why is that? Is it bringing people together? Is it just offering your taste buds wild rides? Is it I don't know. I can tell you in Wisconsin, it's just part of our culture. Beer is whether you like it or don't, it is kind of the backbone of our state. Beer
Totally.
and cheese, and also manufacturing and all this other Americana type of shit. But it's just wild to watch this craft brew industry just blow up, and then to the point where you look at a place like Leinenkugel's in Wisconsin. They
Mhm.
started as a craft brewery, but now they're at the point where they're almost commercial, and that creates resistance within these snobs in the craft beer world. You know what I mean? Like it's just
I do. Aren't they actually owned by like Miller Coors or
I
something like
think they
that
are
now?
now. I think they are now.
So is that like that's like a Golden Road situation almost?
Hmm.
Yeah, or
Because that
even
was
like
yeah.
even like Goose Island. So Goose Island just announced, I think today, they're releasing some more of their Bourbon County beers this year. Normally that's like a Black Friday type of situation. Um, but or maybe they're just announcing the flavors. But they have like 5 different flavors. They announced it today. But Goose Island tends to get a lot of heat because same thing. They started as this craft thing and they're now owned by a corporation and all this kind of stuff. And for me, I like beer. If you got a good product and you got something that tastes good, I really don't care what scale you're at. But I just was wondering, like, if you for the brewery you work for, is it because I don't know that we can get it in Wisconsin? Is that kind of a selling point sometimes as well? Is hey, we're a bigger brewery, but we're also still small enough scale where there is some obscurity in or rarity in accessing our drinks, and we want you to
Yeah,
hold this.
right. Out here especially, I mean, people out here, it really works in my favor to say we are, or most of the time, it works in my favor to go, this is how many chains we're in. I talk a lot about our level of like market penetration. Um, because out here, I feel like it's more a thing like the consumer base isn't there's a lot of like passive like I like craft beer like I like IPAs like it's not as often a thing that people are like really interested in. I mean, of course, you have those places where people are enthusiasts. I mean, Rob and I know each other because we hang out at the same beer bar of that exact sort.
Right.
But for instance, the distributor that I was saying I worked for in Chicago, they sold a lot of Belgian lambic that like if you got it in Chicago, you wouldn't even put it on your shelves, you wouldn't advertise that you have it. You would wait for your preferred customers to come in and say the right password to even be privy to the fact that you have these super rare bottles. And then I moved out here, and I'm seeing a lot of that same stuff in like Whole Foods and Bristol Farms. It's like, okay, it's around, and I guess people are glad they can get it, but no one's like rushing to get it. So I feel like it's just two different consumer environments. So like the buyers I deal with out here, 9 times out of 10, if they hear that your beer is in all these places, they're like, well, then I should have it too because I'm part of everywhere. I'm part of all over the place. But you do have those littler spots that do want the kind of niche things. And we've gotten to a point where I've seen people kind of go like, you might be a little bigger than what we typically are interested in. But there's a way to straddle that line and do both. I mean, we've seen like Pizza Port never really like take any knocks against them and not really lose steam or popularity. And they're huge and they're everywhere, but like the little crafty places often still, you know, fuck with them. So that's kind of like that's what I've always really had an interest in is like if you can do both, if you can be big and like have like high market penetration, but still be really good and kind of hold the interest of the consumer in that way. That's like it's just such a rare thing, and I'm hoping that that's what Harland has kind of managed to do. So far, so good. And I like to think I'm contributing in some way to go like, yeah, I know, like, look, we are getting big, but our beer is still really good. We make really good lagers, which is a thing that I'm extra proud of because that's like, it's the most one of the most delicate styles of beer, if not the most delicate. Um, you can taste all your mistakes in lager versus most other styles. There's some kind of unbalanced, like overwhelming flavor component. Like if you're making an amber ale, it's really malty, which kind of helps. If you're making stouts, you can lose a shoe in those things and maybe not notice. IPAs, obviously they're hoppy as hell, but lagers, I mean, there's no room for error in those. So we make really good lagers. I try to always point that out. I was like, look, we might be big, but we're still making uh, really good beer that's hard to do well.
I feel
What
like. Go ahead, Rob.
no, you sound like you had a very interesting question.
I was just gonna say, I feel like lagers fall to the wayside, and like you said, like so, like hearing that it's such like an intricate process and that you can taste the mistakes in it. I think we need to appreciate the lagers a little bit more because, I mean, when you're at Lambeau Field, Pfizer Forum for a Bucks game, not for any other event, a Bucks game, you really want to drink those game day beers. What's a game day beer? A fucking lager, dude. And like,
I thought what you were going to say was going to be a lot more interesting.
yeah, you know what? Yeah, eat shit, Rob. What do you have to say?
Sorry, we had a little freeze, so I thought that you weren't talking, but it was just my computer froze.
Oh,
It sucks.
no, that's fine. I was just saying we need to appreciate the lager. What interesting, in depth, mind blowing, and life altering question did you have to ask?
Oh, just wait for this. You think you just cut my legs out from under me, but Carl, as the trends in the market seem to be going away from the IPA and more towards craft lagers and lower ABV type beers. Are you seeing that with your Harland Brewing, and what are you guys doing to to move into that market? Obviously, you do good lagers, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, we are lucky in that we kind of got started. That was sort of our jumping off point, but I don't think we really planned on it. So Harlan Japanese lager, um, for like a combined total of at least 2 years. I mean, this statistic moves around, but that was the most popular beer in our distributor's portfolio. Um, and I think that was kind of a happy accident. Like we just made it. It was just a thing we made, and it really took off. And that was right when things are trending, as you're saying, into like I don't know if it's so much away from IPAs, but people are out here anyway are getting more and more into like lower ABV beers and just light and sessionable beers. I mean, it's borderline the desert in parts of LA, so it's hot. So I think people just drink a lot of light beer in
You
general.
want to be able to drink more and have a good flavor profile.
And that, yeah, people are. This is a very. What do you say instead of superficial? people are constantly acting in a way that they're like kind of on stage a little bit or being watched, being witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's like very on record. Everything's kind
Is
of
that transparent? Is that no? That's the
It's
wrong
not
word.
no.
transparency.
I'm
Let me be stupid sometimes. All right, just chill out.
Sometimes.
but I just feel like people are extra careful about not acting foolish or anything or doing anything that can be judged negatively about. So I think like
Sure.
people want to drink, but they want their beers sessionable so that they won't like embarrass
Yeah,
themselves.
for
I
sure.
think.
For sure.
And
And then you have
I
people
will-
like Rob who drink mimosas all day.
Hey,
I listened to that episode.
yeah, let's not talk about that. Back to lagers, because I do have one other. My other question was this: you say you can taste every mistake.
Yeah.
What are the mistakes that you can make in making a lager?
The biggest one that I pick up, and again, like what you taste is what you taste. Everyone's palate is different. For me, and you know, there's all kinds of off flavors. Like diacetyl is like a really common thing that's something I used to know how it occurred, and I don't really remember anymore. And THP is if you ever tasted beer that kind of tastes like paper,
Oh, okay.
it's like this weird lingering aftertaste. Those are flavors you're going to kind of taste no matter what. But again, in a lager, there's not really much to hide behind. It would be more noticeable there. Lagers can get this really kind of like sulfury flavor, or like kind of hot dog water is a thing I've heard a lot.
Okay.
Why do people know what hot dog water tastes like?
Probably just the smell or having eaten hot dogs, and then if you have a liquid that reminds you of
Yeah.
hot dogs a bit.
Just wondering why people are drinking hot dog.
You've
water,
never
but
boiled hot dogs to cook them?
I've never drank the water afterwards.
I mean, there's a little water on them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're being so obtuse about hot dog water, man.
Look, I am who I am, and I've
Limp-
never drank hot dog water.
Limp Bizkit made an entire record on hot dog flavored
I
water,
wouldn't listen
so
to it.
you've never. You
I
should.
wouldn't listen to it.
You should. It's a good one.
I won't, because the name makes me sick to my stomach. The thought of it.
All right. Do you think if you call the beer hot dog water, people would drink it?
I would be surprised if there wasn't already a lager called hot dog water.
There
at
probably
some
is. There probably
Yeah.
is. But
Anyway, so derailed another whatever. Why were we talking about hot dog flavored water? Oh, because
Off flavors in lager.
Lagers can get kind of skunky, right?
Sure, that is so when something gets skunky, that's because it was in either a clear bottle or a green bottle. That's light messing up beer. So brown bottles they're the most resistant to light, or they allow the least amount of light in. And that's another reason why, like, you know, sometimes people, every once in a while, I'll run into someone like, why don't you guys put anything in bottles? Why is everything made there's a store that refused to buy anything in cans. And I had like the most polite version I could of an argument about why cans are better. It's like a mini keg. Way less oxygen is making it into here than through a bottle, and there's no light getting in here. They're cheaper to ship. They weigh less. A lot going on for cans, yeah. But so anyway, skunkiness is from light getting into. And again, it's going to show up more in lagers than virtually any other style of beer, just because they're like light and delicate. There's also, of course, a spectrum of lagers. Like you can have a lager that's like 12%. You know, there's Eisbachs and stuff like that, and they're dark and high ABV. But you know, what you think of when you say lager, you know, a 4 to 5%
Yeah.
light beer.
mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like there's some lagers that almost that's what they want their flavor profile to be, is more of a skunky beer.
I mean, yeah, Rolling Rock and Heineken, you know, those have been in green bottles since forever. And yeah, I think there is an element of their flavor that is there's a flavor that's distinct to those beers from having always been in green bottles, and I guess people have learned to like it. I like Rolling Rock just fine, but I still think it's just a weird choice.
Is there a beer that you or a style that you tend to stray away from?
No, not really. I'm pretty happy to say that over the years, and because I started working with an import portfolio, so you know, I'm drinking like Belgian triples, like, really like kind of spicy Belgian beers and lambics. So they're sour and like big stouts. It kind of had to cut my teeth on the full spectrum. Like I had to be able to sell them, so I had to be
Right.
able to. I would say those really dry like bright golden Belgian beers were the last ones that I learned to appreciate. But I was like, okay, I have to sell these. I have to find a way to kind of like them. So I kind of like forced myself to get into the things I didn't like. But yeah, now I totally have a palate for everything. I will say some of the newer quote unquote styles that exist entirely based on like their adjunct portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like some of the goofier stuff. I can't like judge it or like dissect it the way you would dissect a beer that's made out of just the ingredients in beer. A beer is hops, water, hops, water, yeast, grain. So when you have like a smoothie sour, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't really consider that a style of beer. That is an alcoholic beverage that contains beer. You know
Okay.
what I mean? Because they're
Yeah.
putting unpasteurized fruit in it, like post fermentation, a lot of the time,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of other things. So yeah, that's the closest I would say to there being like a style that I stray away from. They don't taste. Don't get me wrong. Like I like Skittles as much as the next guy. Um, so if you hand me one, I'm not upset about it, but I'm not gonna go like pay money for like a smoothie
Right.
beer.
So Rob
What are the
doesn't.
mixers kind of?
Yeah, it's like I mean, it quite
Cider.
literally is a cocktail.
Okay.
For sure.
It contains beer, but I wouldn't say that it is itself a beer.
That makes sense. So Rob doesn't know I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna like, Rob is seeing somebody, right? And we want Rob to continue to impress this person, and we want Rob to fall in love. And so I'm gonna list for you, Carl, some dating situations, and I want you to tell me what beer would accompany this dating situation. Like what beer should they gravitate towards in these situations? Okay.
Okay.
Just so Rob can like impress this person, because I mean,
I'm super happy about this. You want me to be mad, but I'm happy.
I don't want you. I
I, on
don't.
the other hand, I'm kind of mad. I'm really tired of the whole love thing. I'm engaged. The whole process of figuring out a wedding looks miserable when my fiance tells me that she's going through it. So
Yeah. So
I wouldn't. At least it sounds like listening to it's better than doing it.
no, yeah, I
suppose.
personally am not that involved, but man,
yeah,
Sounds terrible. My
a lot
brother
of
talked
work.
about it.
It is a lot of work. So we'll start with something simple. A movie night. Where you're watching a movie. We'll say in the theater on the big screen. What beer should accompany the situation?
That's too vague of a question. First off, Carl, I'm gonna make him narrow this down because it depends on the type of movie, I bet.
that would influence
You
it
think
because my
so?
initial instinct is just something not super high ABV. I'm kind of a sleepy dude as it is, so if I'm a little too buzzed up for a movie, I'm falling asleep. You're putting me in
Right.
a comfy chair in a dark room, and you're gonna throw like a barrel aged stout at me on top of it. Good night. So I'm gonna say lighter beers, maybe some kind of fruited kettle sour, perhaps,
There
or
you go.
like a wheat beer with some blood orange in it or something like that. Something
That could be, yeah.
light, refreshing, festive. Especially if the movie's boring, you're gonna be fighting that drowsiness. So
What about say a Timbo or something? Well, Pilsner.
sure, Timbo's good. Yeah,
It's always good for what you're talking about.
yeah.
All right. What
I
about
like the orange. Uh, I just had a blood orange Hefeweizen the other day.
As did I. Well, it wasn't half. It was a wheat beer,
But man, it was really good. Anyway, let's move on.
what about a night of playing board games or video games together? Let's start with board games. You're gonna play some Clue, maybe some. We're not talking D&D shit. We're talking like your basic board game night.
Uh, I'm gonna say something higher ABV.
Okay.
Like the lights are on. You're engaged. Um, that it could get kind of dull though. Like if it's a game I'm not that into, give me a little more firepower.
Yeah.
It's the same as when you go to a wedding. I'm basically drinking until I won't be embarrassed on a dance floor, as much as I 100% always should be. Um, I'm drinking to get drunk at a wedding, and if we're playing board games, I'm trying to like lower my inhibitions a little bit, and yeah, I'm trying to spice things up a little bit. I'm not saying game night is inherently boring, but it totally could be, and it totally
Hmm.
has been as many times as it hasn't. So yeah, I'm busting out like the double IPAs. Probably don't want to go too strong. So yeah, maybe like some IPAs, double IPAs.
Hell yeah.
You're gonna be there for a while probably.
You're
So
talking 7 and above.
yeah, 7 to 8.
I like that. So it goes from the board games, and then all of a sudden, Rao looks his lady in the eye and goes, "Hey, baby, let's take this to the living room and play some Mario Kart." So they're moving on to the video
That's
games.
a good Rob.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
You
is.
mean Rob?
He's very provocative.
Pretty easy to nail down, I guess.
But now they're moving to video games. Are they sticking with the higher ABVs?
Yeah, I'm gonna say you can keep it at you maybe go back and forth between IPAs and lagers.
Can I jump in and say I think Mario Kart deserves a hazy. A hazy
All right.
IPA because it's a bright game, it's a fun game, I just restarted this damn thing.
No, you're good.
Sorry, I just got a notification. And you know my computer doesn't like to do two things at once. But I say if you're playing Mario Kart, that's a hazy. That's a tropical hazy
Sure.
game.
Yeah. When I said IPAs, I didn't mean West Coast versus
Yes,
otherwise. By the way, I don't know if this has come to your guys' attention at all, but a lot of people in the brewing community or like the beer professionals or whatever you want to categorize me as part of, uh, not the biggest fan. I think found myself as being one of the I like hazies a lot more than like most of my colleagues,
Oh, nice.
where they're like indifferent at best. So I don't know if that's come up. I mean, like Andrew doesn't love
It's
them.
absolutely. There's a conversation about the fact that because when I started going to Tony's, as our listeners know, I'm not. Just because it's a theme of this podcast, we've all talked about the first beer that we really liked, or whatever that kind of made us like. For me, it was actually not a hazy, but it was the dead guy ale, the Rogue Dead and Dead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was a
Yep.
Scottish ale,
Mm-hmm.
which was great. That was like the first beer that I had where I was like, this is good. I really like this. But when I moved out here and discovered hazy IPAs, I was like, every time I went into Tony's, it was they knew like AJ just figured out that I've moved past that, even though it's been like a year. But the
Gotcha.
first year I came out here, it was like they just put a hazy in front of me because they knew that's what. But I had heard, Andrew kind of say like about other people like, well, hazy, like everybody starts with hazies. That's like the beginner craft beer, like the beginner to the IPA world. They
Right.
get into the hazies because yes, they're very fruity, they're very sweet, they're very easy
Yeah.
to put down.
Not bitter.
There's no the flavor profile. It's like eating candy as opposed to fruit.
And they look cool. I still think they look cool when you get them that they're so hazy that like
Oh,
if they're in
yeah.
a contoured glass, that the contours will actually have like shadow to them. Like that's how thick looking the beer is. Like I still think it looks kind of neat.
That was impressive how quietly you just put that glass on the table. Because I get in trouble for slamming the glass down, and I think I'm being quiet, but you just made Shonda's argument for her that I am not quiet when I put glasses on the table.
Interesting. Well, I hope she listens to this.
No, I hope she doesn't. I don't want. I've been.
Oh, we're two different people.
I, I hope she does. So then you can see if he takes your advice. How about a nice hike? California full of nice hiking trails, an occasional bobcat attack, or something like that. But you're going out, you're hiking, you're walking, and then afterwards you're sweaty. You've just battled the elements, and now you're gonna have a cold one. What are you reaching for?
Um, I'll. So I just did. I don't won't probably mean anything to you, but there's a hike out here called Bridge to Nowhere, and it's a very flat hike.
Hmm.
So me and my buddy actually had a couple beers on the trail, whereas normally you wait till like, you pass your all your inclines. For on the trail, drinking lagers, but um, if I, summit something kind of tough, uh, I'll have like a big beer at the top of that. I'll have a big decadent stout. You just burned like a ton of calories.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it feels like time to like reward yourself. So I've definitely split, a 750 of like a 13% imperial stout with whoever I was hiking with. Which probably sounds kind of dangerous, but I mean, it's down the rest of the way. Shouldn't be too hard, and
Right.
um, it feels like you kind of earned it. So I'm going with like something big, something high calorie, something decadent, something sweet, and yeah, go ahead and have something kind of high ABV because you're having the one and the hard part's over. So reward yourself.
I like that answer. What about a night of Rob's feeling adventurous. He says, "Baby, let's cook dinner together. Let's get the ingredients. I don't know, Rob. What do you like to eat? Mac and cheese. Let's make homemade mac and cheese. It's a cooking experience at home. You're not going out. What are you drinking while you're whipping together this recipe?"
So this is a big one for me. I love standing in front of the stove and just like getting a nice goulash going, and I kind of like tamper, uh, just tinker with it for like an hour. I'm kind of perpetually twisting the dial on the flavors and whatever. Um, if I had to pick just one, I'd say bust out that 750 of like a fancy, some like a lambic.
Hmm.
Um, Also, funky beers like that have like Brettanomyces, like living yeast in it. Um, Very complimentary to food, especially like a pretty wide variety of food, but like kind of decadent comfort food. Um, yeah, I'm gonna say if I have to pick one, I'm going with like a lambic or something in that world, mixed fermentation where it has Brettanomyces and lactobacillus. Uh,
Can you explain those for our listeners? Because me and Drew definitely know what that means, but our
But other
listeners
people
might.
might not.
Brettanomyces is there's several different strains of it. It's like a yeast that like kind of the like you've seen the word like wild on beers. It's like a yeast that um it will continue to produce CO2. Uh, how do I explain? Yeah, I don't know. It's like a living yeast. It'll just like continue to develop. It'll
Right.
Is this like the beer that you had recently that the longer you age it, it actually gets more alcoholic over time or more ABVs over time? Slightly, not a lot, but like you
it
can age
could
it for
it
five
could
years even.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that hang on to bottles of lambic, which has again that yeast strain or a strain of Brettanomyces, but it's just getting that out of like the open air.
Hmm.
So you don't always, you're not isolating anything, so you don't know like what Brett strains you're getting. But yeah, people will sit on those bottles for like upwards of 20 years. I'm not the biggest proponent of that, but it will change flavor over time, and it's without oxidation because the yeast is producing CO2, so it's protecting against oxygen. A lot of other beers that you age, what I used to be infuriated by was I would always tell people, I'm like, okay, you're aging these beers, but you're just letting them oxidize. Like, and like a biological level or whatever, it's just organic material rotting and breaking down. So you can convince yourself that this tastes good, and I'm sure you do because it was really expensive, and then you sat on it for years and years, and um, but I mean, yeah, under like a microscope, it's like there's no beneficial growth happening. It's literally just like decay. Whereas beers that have Brettanomyces in them, that yeast will continue to develop and change on its own, and it protects the beer against oxidation. Um, so even if that yeast wasn't developing new flavors of its own, it would at the very least protect the beer. It would make it very, very shelf stable, just because no oxygen, or like, oxygen is virtually unable to like break the beer down.
Yeah, I got to say, being somebody that knew all of that stuff going in, I think you explained it really well.
Again, this is stuff I don't dust off very often anymore. Like back in the day when I got started in beer in Chicago, and especially like in that area, it was very, very like beer nerdy at the time, and it's still much more so than Los Angeles is. And then the portfolio I was working for, I was talking about this stuff constantly, and it just doesn't come up really much down here. So I feel like I would have had a better explanation of that at my ready several years ago. Um, yeah, I'm somehow like managing to learn less over time, just because like I'm not running into as many people that care about that stuff anymore. So this is refreshing. But
So-
yeah, I wish I would have brushed up a bit.
So I have that 100 the Dogfish Head 120-minute IPA. I had one fresh from this year. We had it on the show. I think,
listened to that as well. You guys are in my algorithm now.
hell yeah. Good.
There have been times where like I'll be driving. I'm driving all day every day, and then if I feel like there's been times where like before the intro or anything, I'll hear Rob's voice be like, because I'm usually just listening to comedy podcasts. I'm like, wait, who is that? And I'm like, oh, that's this dude I drink beer with at the. It's funny to hear him just come on in my car all of a sudden.
But so I bought three bottles of that. I had one fresh. I was gonna have one 6 months from now, and then one in like a couple of years. So really, and I've kind of heard similar things from I've talked to another head brewer before, or master brewer at a local brewery here in Oshkosh, and he kind of said the same thing. Like if they go through the process of putting it in like a bottle or a can, like it's ready to be drank, and that really nothing. But like you said, there's people with like a dedicated room in their basement where they shelve this stuff for quite a long time. I was gifted some bourbon aged stouts from 2018, a handful of years ago. I still have some of them, and I'll drink them from time to time. And I kind of just forget about them is really what it is. They sit in a dark area of a hallway, and I open it up, and I've noticed like they're pretty flat by this point. Like they lack that that bubbliness or that kind of freshness. But if what I hear what you're saying is just throw those 120-minute IPAs into the fridge, cool them down, and drink those fuckers.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing about that beer is because it's so high ABV, it is essentially like a barley wine that's been hopped like an IPA.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had those a little older, and what you want is for it to be enough time for the hops to die off completely, because there'll be a period where you get this like really weird oxidized hop characteristic, which would probably be around if you did drink one 6 months after bottling, that would be pretty pronounced. But if you waited like a year to drink them, the hop character, it would be fair to assume that the hop character would be gone.
Okay.
And then you would just be left with like kind of like the malt beverage, but sans hops, which could be really good.
Sure.
So I mean, I'm not saying don't give it a whirl. And I will say, as much as I'm not like the biggest proponent of aging beers, it's interesting. I usually don't think that they've improved, even in the world of like lambics and stuff. I bought the world's most sought after lambic breweries, this brewery called Cantillon, and I was going to this guy's like lambic party, which was insane. I mean, I wish I could have calculated the amount of money in liquid just sitting in bottles half open on every flat surface of this guy's house. It was insane. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars probably. And I brought some fresh Cantillon and drank it next to some of the very same beers, but a decade older. And I was like, as much as this is like the quintessential beer you're supposed to age, I was like, I do not enjoy the older product as much as I do the fresh product. I'll say like it could be a little green. I'll give it a couple, 2-3 years. Depending on the fruit, if it has like a really acidic, really tannic fruit in it, I'll say give that some time. Um, but my point was going to be that I have had beers that after, some cellaring, are just better than I would think they were going to be, or they might have like a flavor that I just find kind of interesting,
Hmm.
not necessarily good or bad, but like the research aspect of it is interesting.
Absolutely, man. Uh,
I'm gonna just say, can we pause for a second?
I was gonna wrap it up.
Okay, I was gonna say if we wanted to, he's got a whole cooler of beer. If we wanted to go for maybe 20 more minutes, we could do a double release, like release one this half of it this week, half of it next week. That's
Oh,
up to you. I know it's later there.
yeah. Jonah's kind of freaking out too.
Okay, that's cool.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I was
So,
just gonna open a beer because I had finished the one I had.
oh, go ahead. I
You
mean,
still can. I was
we'll
just
we'll still
yeah,
talk.
legitimately just
Yeah. So,
yeah.
well, Carl, I appreciate you coming
Uh,
on.
so-
On
Did you pause it or no?
what?
Did you pause it?
No.
Oh, cool. All right, continue.
um, Carl, I appreciate you coming on the show and really laying down some information. I guess my final question would be: would you like to join our not a cult Porch Pint Society? And
I was gonna get to that too. Yeah.
can we call you an official member as of now?
What is it that is not a cult?
It's not a cult. That's what it is. It's not a cult. It's the Porch Pint Society. It's um, a group of
Can I
people.
take this one?
Yeah, you got it.
Can I take this one? All right. We've decided that to try and create to bring people together over the idea of a backyard brew, maybe over barbecue, maybe over some lawn darts, which are now illegal, but whatever. The Earth is an orbiting porch in the universe, and we are trying to start the Porch Pint Society, which is good vibes, bringing people together, and just having a drink and talking about the good things in life. And we want to get as many people on board with that mentality as we can because we think that that's what the world needs right now.
Well,
Occasionally
that
we'll have
was very
sermons.
poetic, and as much as I do, I kind of became enamored with beer due to its sort of convivial nature. I still don't really understand what I would be doing.
You just,
You're just having beer, man. You see a person that's age 21 or older, and they're looking like they're down. You say, hey, here's your beer. Let's commiserate. Let's go to Tony's and discuss our sorrows and our woes, and together we build community. It takes one person at a time, and then occasionally we'll have sermons and we'll just build people up. I don't know if you
I would say, yeah, I would
see
say
this
that as a beer
beautiful
sales
shirt.
rep,
Yeah, I think I kind of already do that.
yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say, as a beer sales rep, you're already a priest in the Porch Pint Society if
Right.
it was a religion, which it's not. It's also not a cult.
Yeah, it's just not a cult, but we have
that
to. We just have to have a contract that you sign in blood, and it's pretty straightforward.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna say I'm down. But I was just wondering. I was like, I don't know, what's like the schedule or what am I signing up for?
Your schedule
Sounds like
is
you
our
don't know yet.
schedule.
Basically, I'll buy a T-shirt and give it to you that says
You-
Porch Pint Society, and you can wear it, or unless you want a hat. Yeah.
Yeah, you can have
I
a
don't
hat as
even
well.
really know all what's in here, but camp beer is a nice lager we do for the summer. You can poke around and see what I think it's mostly these though.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, man. I had this hard cider from Sunken Paddle, pretty tasty. It was good. I would have it again. I like the occasional cider, with a little.
Can I see that bottle?
Yeah, you can kind of see it.
Oh, you know what? No, I feel like I was gonna say that looks familiar, but I feel like I'm at a point where everything looks familiar.
Probably. I mean, I don't know how old they are. A handful of years, I think. But yeah, it's pretty tasty. What was the beer that you drank again?
We had Space Melter, and that's Harland Brewing's collab with Brewery West. West Coast IPA, unfiltered West Coast IPA. Again, very soft, very fruity, very citrusy, not very bitter. Yeah, refreshing, very drinkable. Nothing really too prohibitive about it. It's a little on the sweeter side. It's not very dry, not bitter. Really happy with this. That was the first time It was the first time I've tried it. And it was the first time I even know of anyone trying it. It just came up here today.
Dare we say a Dudes with Brews worldwide exclusive?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. Yeah.
God
Just,
damn it.
if we're on our way out, I just gotta say, take that, Jack. How do you like that one, Jack?
Take that, Jack. See you later.